Oh, no.
Sorry for interrupt.
Okay, and then I'm just setting up the live stream.
Welcome, everyone. We're just letting everyone get connected and we're getting our Facebook live stream going. So please get yourself situated, familiarize yourself with the controls here, and we'll start in just a minute.
And if our LPC members can make sure that you're muted, unless you're talking, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, and I am all ready to go to hit the go live button whenever you give me the go ahead.
I'm ready when you are, Jenny.
Ready? All right. Okay.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Danny Lappin, and I'm a community revitalization specialist with the New York State Department of State Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the City of Gloversville's first local planning committee meeting. This is a meeting to kick off the city's downtown revitalization initiative. And we have a very special guest here to do a welcome. I'd like to hand over the floor to the New York State Secretary of State, Mr. Robert Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, it's all yours.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate the introduction. And I just wanted to say congratulations on the successful DRI award to Gloversville. I'm so thrilled for you all. It became clear through the application process that it is a product of pure passion and love for this community. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge Mayor DeSantis. It's a pleasure to join you and to be at the beginning of this transformative journey that we call DRI. I also want to recognize my colleagues in government, Assemblymember Smullen and Senator Tedisco, for the work that they did in terms of supporting this application for Gloversville. As I jump into the prepared remarks, before I do that, I just wanted to just share how excited I am that the governor selected me to be the Secretary of State and do transformative community development projects like this. I began in a similar place in terms of my public service, serving on my community board in East Harlem and working on development projects on the most grassroots level, and knowing that we can do some great projects and transformational things for our community, and to be able to do this with you and watch that happen in Gloversville and in other places across the state is really an honor. So let's talk a little bit more about Gloversville and the DRI process. I'll start with a quote from the regeneration of a community does not happen by itself. It requires vigilance and targeted action by civic leaders and the enthusiasm of a critical mass of citizens. Now, those are not my words. Those are the words of the mayor, Mayor DeSantis, in his book. Thank you for that, because I think it really summarizes just the passion and energy that has to happen to make our communities transform. And Gloversville didn't win the DRI in an earlier round, so we are grateful for your perseverance and how you remain committed to the vision that you have for Gloversville. And when we talk about civic vigilance and action, it's clear that we're talking about you, Gloversville. Upstate communities have experienced challenges. We all know and have heard about them. The roller coaster ride of urban development, early on, the explosion of the glove industry with the Erie Canal being constructed, and then seeing some of those things move abroad into other places, and then suburban sprawl and the change in the economy post deindustrialization. But the good thing is we didn't make a lot of the mistakes that we've seen in different urban renewal plans. And you have the historic registered locations there that we can use as the bones for, what we know is going to be an amazing transformation and rebirth and revitalization here at Gloversville. So I'm excited to see that happen. And as the cornerstone of the state's economic development programs, the DRI is really the grand prize, because it's not the state coming in and telling you what you should be doing about development in your community. No, that's not what this is about. This is about the community telling us, the state, how we can facilitate community-driven plans with local stakeholders coming together, picking what they believe is going to be the key projects and investments that will make change in the downtown. So it's a people-driven process. And it's not the beginning of your revitalization efforts. Clearly, you've been working on this because in order to make an application for DRI, you have to show some of the components in place and some of the work to being done in order to move it forward in the process. So clearly your determination has gotten you there, and clearly the work that you've done gives us the chance to be right there on your side as we continue to build and move forward. So the DRI is, again, a collaborative program. So we bring the local and the state together on an interagency level. And what's important is that we look at an interdisciplinary and multidimensional process. We have a team that's going to work alongside you the entire way. I want to thank my staff, the extremely talented folks of the Department of State, the revitalization specialists. You've got Danny, but you also have a team behind him, as well as our sister agency partners and our consultant team that's going to help you hit the ground running and help us develop this strategic plan. But this is all about you, the LPC members. That's the most critical part of the DRI planning and implementation process. It's a community-driven process, a consensus-building process, one where the leaders come together and make decisions. So that is the most important thing, and what makes our plan process and the pride that we have in the DRI program so successful. So with that, I just want to keep us on track and remember that it's a process. It's not going to happen immediately, but we will be able to choose, reinforce, synergize with one another, and take these future investments, partner them with outside investments, and watch the transformation happen. So this is the beginning. This is a $10 million award that's focused on the end goal, which is realizing your community's vision. So DOS is proud to be your partner in this exciting and transformative journey, and that we are excited to be a part of the story as it unfolds. So I look forward to watching and seeing the great work, and certainly visiting and seeing the outcome now and in the future as we move ahead on this initiative. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the members of the LPC. And in advance, thank you for the hard work you're going to put into making something amazing happen, not just for you, but for all the residents of New York State and all the folks who choose to visit Gloversville as a result of your good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, as mayor, I just want to, thank everyone who's attending here. It's really important to have a lot of input from the community. This is going to be a very intensive process through the next 4 months, and we need all the input we possibly can from the public. I want to repeat what the secretary has said. This has got to be community driven, and driven not just by the 14 members of the LPC, but by the community. So we really encourage active, vocal participation from the wider community. And I'm glad to see that there are a lot of people that have joined the meeting that are not members of the LPC. And so, as we move forward, I really encourage you to have a lively discussion about these. The second point that I want to make is that during the course of this process, we're going to be evaluating individual projects, but I want everyone to try to keep the big picture in mind. How does each project augment the others? How do we achieve that synergy? Because the goal is really, a district that is, because of that synergy, is energized. It's attractive to a lot of people visiting, a lot of people living in downtown. The projects are connected with one another meaningfully, and the downtown is connected to its adjacent neighborhoods in a meaningful way. So keep that big picture in mind as we look at individual projects. Again, I want to thank everyone for this, to be involved in this process. And I'm hoping that as time goes on through the next couple of months, we have even more people that are joining us on these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. That was a tremendous opening, Secretary. We're so glad you were able to join us. I love that book myself. So as soon as you started reading the code, I knew exactly where it came from. My name's Lisa Nagel. I'm with Elan Planning and Design, located in Saratoga Springs, New York. You'll hear mostly from myself and Laura Lorenko today on the DRI process. Laura and I will be the key point of contacts from Elan and the lead consultant helping the city through this effort. More on our team later. So we've gotten through the welcomes and we're so thrilled to have everybody here. We would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce everyone on this call for the LPC members, as well as our state partners. And so we're going to take just a few minutes to get through the introductions. We'll then talk about the DRI Code of Conduct, and Danny Lappin from the Department of State, who started us off earlier, will go through that for us. I'll provide a downtown revitalization initiative overview for everybody to understand really what the process is. Then we're going to ask James Hannes from the downtown development specialist to go over the DRI application, the winning application that was submitted. And then we have some discussion items with the LPC, and we'll go through next steps. A couple of notes as we go forward here for everyone on the LPC and the public listening in. All of this information is going to, if you can back one slide, Laura, all of this information will be put on the City of Gloversville DRI.com website. So this recording will be there. This PowerPoint will be there. Materials through everything through this entire process will always be on that website. There's also an opportunity for people to ask questions and comment on that website. We monitor it as we go through. So I just want to kind of emphasize that, and you'll see the website name come up as we go through this, because there's a lot of information. This is the first and only meeting where we'll be doing most of the talking because we just have to get through a lot of information. But from here on out, LPC members, it'll be much more interactive. So we kind of want to apologize a little bit up front because there's a lot of information to get through. So some logistics too, as we go. So LPC members, you're in our meeting as panelists. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question as we go through. You can also use the chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For the public, we set aside at least 15 minutes. We're hoping for 20 at the end of this presentation to have public input, dedicated public input. At any time, though, through here, you can enter your questions in the Q&A using the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen. It has the red circle on it right now in front of you. We do have members of our team monitoring the chat windows and the Q&A windows and the Facebook Live feed. So those of you who are watching on Facebook Live can also enter questions as you've been accustomed to in the city before. So rest assured, we'll get to the questions and comments at the end from the public. LPC members, feel free to chime in at any time. So with that, I'll ask the mayor and Mr. Hart to go through and ask our LPC members to introduce themselves.
Okay. Okay. You know, I didn't see your picture, Kevin. Kevin Chamberlain, are you out there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Tell us about you.
Just to brief who you are, Kevin, and who you're representing, even though it's on the slide, just so everybody can meet you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Chamberlain, owner of Upstate Coffee in Gloversville. Honored to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Superintendent Halloran.
Hi, everybody. David Haller, Superintendent of Gloversville Large School District, and happy to be part of this committee. I'm a graduate of Gloversville 30 plus years ago. So excited to see the work that can be done with this committee.
Thank you. LaShawn Hawkins.
Hello, everybody. I'm LaShawn Hawkins. I'm the founder of I Can Breathe and I Will Speak nonprofit located in Gloversville. And I'm also with the Gloversville Large School District as their family community educator.
Great. Okay. Mark Kilmer from our chamber.
Hello, everyone. Happy to have you here in Gloversville today. My name is Mark Kilmer. I'm the president and CEO of the Fulton Montgomery Regional Chamber. And I'm also here as a representative from the Mohawk Valley Regional Economic Development Corporation Council. And I'm so grateful that we got the DRI here in Gloversville. I was born and raised in Fulton County, spent half my life living physically in Gloversville, and probably most of the other half in Johnstown. But I have an absolute desire to watch this city go forward and move up, and I'm sure that we'll do it as a group.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Janelle Kraus from Gloversville Arts Alliance.
Yeah, hi. My name is Janelle Kraus. I'm president of Gloversville Arts Alliance, which is an arts nonprofit serving Fulton Montgomery County. And I am also a high school art teacher here in Gloversville.
Thank you, Janelle. Jenny Major.
Hi, I'm the Gloversville City Clerk and also the city liaison to the Gloversville Recreation Commission, which is a group that puts on 16+ events in the city along with youth programming.
Thank you, Jenny. She also runs City Hall. And Mike Medina from the Fulton County Barbershop. Mike?
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Medina. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. Just very grateful to be a part of such a great collective group, and with the same goal in mind. Very ambitious group of people, and I'm happy to be here. Hopefully we can see the changes through, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Wally, I'll turn it over to you for the rest.
Thanks, Mayor. Hi, everybody. I'm Wally Hart. I live here in Gloversville, and I work for the Lexington Foundation, Lexington ARC. Aya Mustafa is another member. Aya? She was here.
Yeah, I saw her here. Maybe she's muted.
Hi, so my name is Aya Mustafa. I'm a new resident here in Gloversville. I was working as a lawyer in City Hall and overseas, and I'm glad to be here today with you guys to enjoy this meeting. Thank you.
We're glad to have you with us. Thank you very much. Jeff Peck. I didn't see whether Jeff was with us. Okay, in interest of time, for those of you who can see the screen, Jeff is with Nathan Littauer Hospital, vice president there at the hospital, and very involved in our community. So we welcome Jeff to be part of the committee. Chris Pessis.
Hey there. I've been a resident of Gloversville since 1980. I raised my children here. And I think ever since 1985, I've been involved in the community in some way or other. I was on the Board of Education for many years, library, still in there, involved in the co-op. And I will have to say that with my experience of being co-chair of the capital campaign of the library, I certainly understand the power of the public, private, and state cooperation and collaborative efforts. So without that collaboration, the library would not have succeeded in its renovation project. So.
Thank you, Chris. Ron Peters.
Hi, I'm Ron Peters. I'm the president and CEO of the Fulton County Center for Regional Growth. We are a 501c3 corporation that provides economic development services to the Fulton County. And we have an outstanding relationship with the city of Gloversville and working through many initiatives, and we're happy to be part of this team and look forward to work with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Dr. Greg Truckenmiller.
Hi, I'm Greg Truckenmiller. I'm the president of Fulton Montgomery Community College, and I'm very excited to be part of this committee and continue the college's long tradition of working with economic development and partnering with our communities to make the entire region better.
Thank you, Dr. Truckenmiller. Councilwoman Marcia Weiss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marcia Weiss. I'm Councilwoman of the First Ward in Gloversville. Very proud of that. On several committees in the city. And my latest endeavor is working on the committee for the Code Blue.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the members for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll move through the rest of the introductions, but just I know some of the LPC members are probably questioning what is your role on this endeavor. I know everyone is excited, and it's a great committee. I know many of you, and we're so pleased to be working with you. You'll see in the lower right-hand corner of many of these slides, there's a little green note. I just want to point that out. So there's a DRI roles and responsibilities handout. I believe every LPC member received this, but for anyone else, including the LPC and the members of the public, again, on the website, cityofgloversvilledri.com, there's an About tab, and under the About tab will be all of this information, including the handouts. So, and I say that because we're not going to read each of these slides. We're going to move through them rather quickly, but they are available, as will be this recording. So the LPC, you can see who makes up the LPC. And really, the long and the short of it is we're working with you. We're facilitating the process to develop what's called a strategic investment plan. And we'll talk in detail what goes in that plan in a moment. Your role is to review the projects as they come in. And at the end of the day, at the end of the process, you're going to recommend with our assistance which projects will be are selected for DRI funding. You're going to help us get the word out on public engagement, and we'll talk in detail about public engagement. The mayor mentioned that, and it's a very important component of this process. We have a variety of ways in which we are going to reach out to the public and where the public will be able to provide input, and we'll explain that. We have about monthly LPC meetings. I'll share a schedule later. There is a lot of information. I just wanted to point out too that along the way, we may want to form work groups to convene working sessions. And that's an option that we have with the LPC as we get the project information in. So just to make the process a little bit more smooth and to be able to digest the information a little bit more easily. So next slide. We also are working with, as Ron Peters said, the Fulton County Center for Regional Growth, and James Hannes, who's a downtown development specialist, and Desiree Perham, also from CRG. And they're really our boots on the ground. So we're working closely with James. We worked side by side with James in developing the application for the funding. And they're helping as part of our team today, for example, monitoring the chat, et cetera, as we go through. So we'll work with them, and they'll be kind of our local boots on the ground to solicit information on the projects as we get going. Next slide. I won't go through all of our team members, and Laura and I introduced ourselves. We're so pleased to be working still in Gloversville. We've been helping with a number of planning initiatives since 2019. So I've been able to meet many of you, and so thrilled to be working on this project. I will point out Michael Indolo from the MRB group. Michael's a real estate and economic analyst, and you'll hear from Michael in a little bit. MRB is a critical partner of our team as they help evaluate the private sector project requests as we go through. So Michael's very, very good at that. And the rest of our team are support roles in a variety of ways, as you can see. Next slide. And I talked to this, so we're the facilitators of this process. This is the City of Gloversville Strategic Investment Plan, and we facilitate that with our state partners and guidance from our state partners to pull together the plan. And we'll handle all of that. And we also do, as you've seen your emails from Laura Lorenko, keep an eye out for those because there'll be many more. We handle all the meeting and event logistics as we move forward as well. So I'll ask Danny Lappin to introduce his state partners.
Hi, thank you so much, Lisa. Everybody, it's an honor to have the opportunity to work with such an energetic, exciting, and dynamic community such as the City of Gloversville. I want to thank Mayor DeSantis and Wally Hart for being such great partners, and Lisa and Laura and her team for doing such a great job, and the secretary for an awesome introduction. I want to introduce myself. My name is Danny Lappin. I am the project manager for the City of Gloversville DRI. I also want to acknowledge our department director, Sarah Crowell, the deputy secretary, Keisha Santiago, and my supervisor, Dave Ashton. They're all on the call, and I wanted to acknowledge them. We'll be working to make sure that this process runs smoothly with the help of our excellent state partners. We generally provide project management services, and we also handle public realm projects. We work with a wide variety of state agencies, including Empire State Development and HCR, and this year newly NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. And I wanted to give our state agency partners an opportunity to introduce themselves. So I'll ask Mike Reese with ESD to please introduce himself.
Thanks, Danny. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Mike Reese. I'm the regional director for Empire State Development in the Mohawk Valley region. That's a 6-county region, which includes Fulton County. In one way or another, I've worked for 3 different economic development agencies and have provided some economic development services to Fulton County and Gloversville for the past 36 years. Looking forward to working with you and the committee on developing your strategy and projects. I will let you know, Allison Madmoon, my deputy director, has gone on maternity leave as of yesterday. So she will not be attending the meetings through probably through April. But after April, she will be back as we get closer to the strategy completion and we start working on review and support for the projects that are identified by the committee during the winter months. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. And I'd like to also give my colleague Mary Barthelme from HCR an opportunity to introduce herself.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Barthelme. I am a project manager with New York State Homes and Community Renewal. And Homes and Community Renewal manages the grant and loan fund projects that are awarded, and many of the projects sponsored by nonprofits like theaters or arts organizations.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I don't believe that I saw Matthew Brown with NYSERDA on the call. Is he, Matt, are you there? Matthew Brown is with the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. His agency is going to play a key role in assisting project sponsors with the building decarbonization aspect of their projects. NYSERDA has a wealth of resources ranging from outreach specialists to architects to clean energy experts to help folks make sure that they're meeting the sustainability and climate resiliency goals in the DRI.
Yeah, and Danny, can I just add, this is Sarah, that I know Matt Brown was not able to make it today, but we look forward to having much more from NYSERDA at the next meeting, so stay tuned for that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I don't know if Ms. Caruso, the governor's regional rep for the Mohawk Valley, is on the call. I don't see her name there, but the governor's regional rep also participates in the DRI planning process and keeps the executive chamber apprised of all events, related to the DRI, and to make sure, that the process is running smoothly. And we look forward to Ms. Caruso's continued involvement in the Gloversville DRI and in the Little Falls DRI in Mohawk Valley.
Hi, everyone. This is Keisha Santiago Martinez. I know that Danny did the quick overview for the Department of State, but I just really wanted to stop for a second and introduce myself. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State. And I do recall talking with somebody from Gloversville about the 100 in a day event that you had a few years ago. And I just have to say, I'm so excited that Gloversville is our DRI this year. You all have just been on my radar, really doing some fantastic work over there. And I really just can't wait to come and visit. I'm so excited for you. And I just know you're going to really make the most of this grant.
Thanks, Keisha. We're so great that you're able to join us. Thank you to all of our state partners, and we working with the state, they'll be with us lockstep through this process. And we've participated in every round of the DRI. And I have to say that the state partners are an invaluable resource, answering questions and guiding us in some key questions. So we're very happy to have them here in the agencies and the roles that they're playing. And then good to hear that NYSERDA will be at a future meeting because they're new state partner in this DRI round 5, and we're excited to bring in that aspect. So thank you again to our state partners. So we'll ask Danny to go through the code of conduct.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So just a quick high-level overview of the Code of Conduct. It is a document that at a base level ensures a high level of transparency and ethical conduct throughout the course of this planning process. The DRI is a very high-profile planning process. It's a very high-profile initiative for the state. And so it's imperative that we dot every I and cross every T as we go through this planning process and all the way through project implementation. Next slide, please. So all members of the DRI LPC must always serve and act in the public interest, regardless of their affiliation, relationship with any business, not-for-profit, or interest group or other organization. Essentially, the mantra to remember is the city of Gloversville first, and what we want to do is always act in the best interest of the community. The Code of Conduct essentially addresses all potential or perceived conflicts of interest between LPC members and their interests. And as I said before, all members must read and sign the Code of Conduct by February 15th. You can scan, sign, and send me, or sign, scan, and send me the document via email. You can mail it to our office, but please, in order to get that document to us as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So when you are interacting with the public, the DRI is a high profile project. So there'll often be times where folks will ask you about the DRI, they'll ask you about projects. It's always important to use the Code of Conduct as your barometer for any discussions around the DRI that you may have in a public setting. And the easy acronym to remember is DAD. And being a dad myself, it's really easy for me to remember. It's to always disclose conflicts of interest, always act in the public's interest, and disqualify if necessary. So for example, if there is a project or an issue that you feel might have a perception of a conflict of interest, even if it's tangential and you're not sure, it's always best to recuse yourself in any sense. Next slide, please. So in terms of a conflict of interest, this is pretty straightforward for those of you who have served on committees. For those of you who have not, this is a kind of broad definition or a direct definition of a conflict of interest. It's really important to kind of remember that conflict of interest arises usually in a situation where somebody has a financial tie or a direct tie to a project that they're making a decision on. So in this case, this is kind of conceptualized by when someone's personal interest, financial or otherwise, has the potential to interfere or appear to interfere with the member's advice on the DRI kind of planning process. So again, it's important to also remember that any sort of conflict of interest may arise when this particular situation happens that is more than incidental. So if there's something that just is like having has a perception to be, cause a problem, chances are that's a conflict and you have to recuse yourself. Next slide, please. So any potential conflict of interest must be disclosed at the earliest possible time. So again, this is at every LPC meeting, there will be a preamble that is read. There'll be an opportunity for folks to disclose any potential conflicts of interest. The meeting materials and agendas and all project materials be sent ahead of time to each LPC member. So each LPC member will have an opportunity to clearly review all meeting materials to identify a potential conflict of interest or an actual conflict of interest well ahead of time. If they have a question about a potential conflict, it's always good to ask rather than to wait and potentially vote. And as I said before, even the appearance of impropriety or the appearance of improper conduct should be avoided. So even if it's something that you may not disagree with, but you could see a possibility of a conflict arising, please avoid it. If you're unsure and you don't receive a satisfactory answer from myself or someone in an LPC meeting, you can always request an opinion from the New York State Department of State Ethics Council. And their contact information is later on in this presentation. Next slide, please. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the recusal, a member may not vote or attempt to influence a discussion or vote where a potential conflict exists. You achieve this by recusing yourself and by announcing you have a conflict of interest, and you either leave the room or you don't participate in the discussion. If there is an actual project at hand that you have clear, factual, unbiased information that you'd like to provide, you can do that so long as you don't attempt to influence a decision or that you have a conflict of interest on, or perceived or actual. Next slide, please. So members, in this case for the DRI, members must identify a potential conflict at the first meeting in which the matter giving rise to the conflict is discussed. So at the earliest possible time. Again, it's important to think about, this recusal as a kind of a hair trigger situation. Anything that might set off your radar that you may have a conflict, it's always best to be safe and recuse yourself. A list of recusals together with the recusal form that has been sent to you all should be on the LPC section of the website, will be maintained for each project for the duration of the DRI planning process. So once you do recuse yourself from a particular project, we'll have that on file and we'll be able to monitor that for you so that you don't run afoul or you don't forget, or that we all remain on the same page with regard to potential conflicts of interest. This list will be updated at each meeting, and the LPC co-chairs will remind members of their obligation to recuse at each meeting of the committee, usually in the beginning. Next slide, please. So I want to talk briefly about acting in the public interest. One important concept to remember is unwanted privileges. No member should attempt to use his or her position of the LPC to secure unwanted privileges or exemptions from himself or others. You don't want it himself, herself, or others, excuse me. You don't want to say, I'm a member of the LPC and I can make this decision, so you have to do this. It, kind of leads into this whole, Hollywood type situation, but that's something you really want to avoid because that is considered highly unethical. Also, no member should disclose confidential information acquired by him or her in the course of his or her duties as a member by reason of their position in the LPC to further their own interests. So when materials are designated confidential, it's always important to maintain their confidentiality and only, distribute materials that have been received prior authorization by myself or Department of State. Next slide, please. So one important thing to remember is in light of the current public health situation surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, it's important that all LPC members agree to abide by all on-site local, state, and federal protocols in place to reduce the risk and spread of COVID-19. It's imperative that we act in our best interest to preserve the public health and protect the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. We do that by following the proper COVID-19 protocols set in place by the local, state, and federal government. And all LPC members will be required to adhere to those principles. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions about the code of conduct or the perceived or actual conflicts of interest, in a situational basis, please feel free to contact Ms. Baldwin at her phone number or email address below. And next slide, please. And I'd like to hand it over for a DRI overview to Lisa Nagel.
Thanks, Danny. And again, LPC members, you receive the code of conduct information by email. So you have that as well. And that this information we can provide to the Lisa Baldwin's contact information to you as well if you need that. Let's talk a little bit about what the DRI process is. Again, this will be a high-level overview, and this will all be on the website, cityofgloversvilledri.com. So the state program has been, this is the 5th year running on the DRI program, and it's really about transforming, downtowns, and it's about creating active and vibrant downtowns. It's about attracting new businesses, growing jobs, and growing the tax base. It's about enhancing public spaces, and it's about building diversity. And These are all aspects that Gloversville has, and it fits well with this program. Something new this year is the lower right-hand corner with the decarbonization. And this is cross-cutting. It goes across all of the goals, the state DRI goals. And this is where NYSERDA will be lending some technical assistance as we move through this process to look at how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, buildings, heating and cooling, et cetera. So it's a very nice program, and it fits well with the city of Gloversville. Next slide, please. So our role as the LPC members and facilitating we do is to prepare what's called a strategic investment plan. This is the plan that I'll go over the schedule, which gets submitted to the state for their consideration of DRI projects. And the process is loosely defined here in the blue arrows. We'll start with a vision and goals and strategies. We begin with the state. We have some from the DRI application that James will review. We will have public and other stakeholder engagement throughout the process, and we'll talk in detail about that. We identify projects and we vet them, both with the LPC, and the public gets to weigh in on the projects as well. And this all gets sort of memorialized, if you will, in the DRI strategic investment plan, which goes to the state for their consideration. Next slide. So what is in the strategic investment plan? These are the contents or the chapters, if you will, that we have for the strategic investment plan. It's self-explanatory. We are working now on the downtown profile and assessment, which is really an assessment of the opportunities, strengths, and needs of the downtown. Our team's putting that together, and we'll be able to share that with the LPC members shortly. We will have Gloversville specific vision, goals, and strategies that align with the state's vision, goals, and strategies of the program. We'll talk about downtown management and how do we get the projects implemented. And this is where the Center for Regional Growth and James Hannis's positions, the downtown development specialist, will be critical to this role. We'll describe the public engagement. And then last, but certainly not least, which projects will make it ultimately into this plan, which will be vetted. The little images to the right, I just want to let the LPC members know and members of the public, if you have interest, since this is the 5th year, there are a number of DRI plans online. You can just Google New York State DRI, and any number, all the communities that have won in previous years' plans are online, as well as their award booklet in terms of what projects were funded for those communities. So if you have any interest, you can probably read more DRI plans than you're desired to. Next slide. I'll ask Laura to talk a little bit about our public engagement strategy here.
So thanks, Lisa. So hello, everyone. I'm Laura Lorenko. I'm with Elon as well. And we'd like to emphasize that public support and engagement is a very important part of the DRI process. And it was a key part of the development of the DRI application. And it will also be the case for the development of the DRI strategy. Let me just get my video up here. We will be using a variety of virtual and potentially in-person platforms, and there will be 3 main opportunities for engagement. So first are the LPC meetings, and these are open for public observers, as is the case today. The second is 3 public events. The first one, which I will discuss later in the meeting, is scheduled to open next week, and this will share information on the DRI planning process and also gather public input on the vision and the goals. The second event will provide an opportunity for the public to review and comment on the full list of potential projects. So as Lisa mentioned, there will be an opportunity for that. And the last event will present the draft strategic investment plan in full for public comment before it's finalized. And in addition, there will be targeted outreach activities such as focus groups and interviews throughout the process. And all information on public engagement will be posted on the project website and also shared through the project mailing list, which you can subscribe to through the website and through other channels. The engagement approach will be outlined in a public engagement strategy, which will be reviewed with the LPC, and this will be made available on the website as well as early as next week. And on that point, LPC members, you should have all received a copy of the draft public engagement earlier today, as well as a link to the LPC questionnaire where you can submit your comments on this draft document. And while we're all here, we just wanted to take a minute to see if any LPC members had any initial thoughts on inclusive public engagement and outreach methods that have worked well in your community. And I invite you to further elaborate in that questionnaire, which you received today. So I'll pause here for a minute. Would anyone like to share any advice or input on inclusive public engagement and outreach methods for Gloversville? Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Yep.
We did some public engagement when we were planning the renovation of the library. And we did find that we did a lot of inviting specific groups, and we kind of combined groups of people that seem to have a similar demographic base of support. And we actually found that the people that attended were very involved and excited to be asked to be a part of it. But I would have to say that I would say maybe a fifth of the numbers of people that we invited actually participated. So it's, and the reason I'm being because everybody's working hard. Everybody has that, you know, you get involved from different organizations are already up to their ears in involvement. And so I found it to be frustrating at times, was rewarding to have the participation of the people that showed up, but it was also frustrating because I felt like we should have been able to reach a lot more people than we did.
Great. Okay, thanks, Chris. Any other experiences or suggestions anyone would like to share initially? Again, you'll have more time with that questionnaire. Okay.
Just a super quick response, Chris. This is Lisa. We same experience in working in the LWRP and the BOA. And with the good thing about I guess the good thing about the pandemic was that we were able to pivot in public outreach, and our numbers have increased 3-4-fold in the city of Gloversville with participation. So that's been good. You know, we've been getting very, very good, thoughtful input on the virtual side.
Yeah, we did ours way before virtual was
right.
a thing. So.
All right.
All right, so back to Lisa for the project selection process.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Laura. And there'll be more on public engagement. Laura will speak specifically to this towards the end. So there are eligible and ineligible types of projects that we'll consider. The eligible types of projects are public improvements like streetscape improvements, sidewalks, bike lanes, street trees, etc. The second bullet, new development and redevelopment and rehabilitation of existing structures. So there are a number of both of those types of projects in the DRI application. If you've had a chance to look at it, that's also on the City of Gloversville DRI.com website. Could be private and nonprofit organizations. There could be branding and marketing. Some communities have looked at that. The city of Oneonta, which the mayor is familiar with, they had a branding and marketing and rebranded the entire downtown of city of Oneonta using DRI money. Came out really nice. And then there's also a grant fund or a revolving loan fund that there's a cap on the number of dollars that can be put into that fund, but could be used for smaller type projects, say facade renovations, or other types of interior renovations on some of the buildings down in the DRI area. What cannot be funded are things like anything that happens before the actual award. So before the state determines who the recipients of the DRI money would be. Any planning activities, operation maintenance, you can acquire property, other kind of program expenses. And then the last one is sort of the construction or rehab of a standalone parking garage. If the parking garage was part of, say, a larger mixed use project, then that could be considered. But just a regular parking garage is not eligible. Next slide. So the considerations as we get there, and we will build out specific vision, goals, and strategies with you to evaluate projects as they come in. But initially, this program is about transforming downtowns. It's a transformative program. So, it almost goes without saying, but worth emphasizing that the project should be transformative. Has to be within the DRI boundary, and James is going to talk about that boundary in just a minute. I mentioned private nonprofit. Has to be shovel ready, so able to break ground within 2 years. So there's sort of a readiness component here. New this year is there's a minimum of a $100,000 DRI funding request for any project. Also new on the right-hand side, the purely residential. So if there's a project that's being proposed, it's purely residential. In other words, there's no commercial unit on the first floor and residential upstairs. That would be mixed use, but just all residential. There has to be at least 8 units with an affordable component to it. The other new thing is it has new and substantial rehabilitation of projects has to conform with the stretch energy code. That's something that's been in New York, used largely downstate, starting to make its way around the state. And it is what it says. We're stretching the energy code to be more energy efficient in some of these buildings and save energy. And that sort of speaks to the decarbonization goal. And then we'll talk, Michael will talk about the match requirements on how we leverage additional funds. And we want to have a discussion with you on what that potential match requirement will be. Next slide.
And Lisa, just to qualify, there should be a comma on that residential point. It has to be at least 8 units in size, comma, and it has to have an affordability component. So just to clarify
Okay.
that.
Got that.
Sorry.
Grammar, that's important. Thanks, Laura. So how do we do this? Let me talk very briefly again. This is posted, but we'll work with you, the LPC, to evaluate all the potential projects and how does this work. So we're starting with the DRI application, which James is going to speak to. One thing we want to talk with you about after James speaks is the potential to have what we call an open call for projects, which is that we started with a certain number of projects in the application that got submitted to the state in Gloversville 1, the DRI. An open call for projects can build on that. Is there anything that we missed? Is there any new projects that have come along since we wrote that application? And we'll talk about that. And we're going to ask for a vote from the LPC members if you'd like to do an open call for projects to kind of, I'll say, fish around and see if there's any other projects out there. We'll work with you to define the selection criteria and again, public input to solicit feedback on the actual projects. So that will be more towards the end of March. We will take all of that public input and the information that we will collect on your behalf and working with everyone to share with the LPC, either collectively or in working groups, to determine which projects and narrow that list down. So we take the public input and all the information that we're collecting and facilitate the process to select the potential list of projects around April, probably mid to late April. And then what happens at the end of the day is that the LPC recommends what we call a final slate of projects. So it's not projects that are prioritized, it's a slate of projects that will be recommended to the state. It goes in the strategic investment plan and recommended to the state for funding. That final slate, you've been awarded $10 million. That final slate of projects should be in the vicinity of $15 million. And then next slide, please. So the state will receive your strategic investment plan. I'll go over a schedule, but the goal is June, a draft in June, final in July plan. The state receives all this information, this body of information, and begins to evaluate it on their end. And does it align with the state evaluation criteria? They have their own criteria. And if we're submitting a slate of projects that are around $15 million, the state begins their evaluation process. And through that, things might drop off, things might change, a project might change course, et cetera, et cetera. So it's basically sort of having some backup projects that the state can then choose which of those slate of projects will receive the DRI funding. So that happens post the strategic investment plan submittal. Again, the final being due in July. After the award, our state partners would then contract with the awardees. Depending on what the project type is, it might be with Empire State Development, it might be with the Department of State, it might be with the Homes and Community Renewal. It just depends on the project type and which state agency would be the lead there. Again, this process slide is on the website. So what are we looking at? As Danny said at the outset, it's a fast-moving project, and we've covered the components of the strategic investment plan on the left. I'll just point out in the yellow boxes for members of the public listening, we're going to have, and Laura's going to talk about this, our first public engagement starting next week. And then we'll work with the LPC and collect information. That open house number 2 towards the end of March would be the projects, and the public will have the opportunity to comment on the projects. And then we'll have a final presentation of the final plan with the public. We've slated 4 LPC meetings. Laura will talk about them as well. There's also in your questionnaire that you received. This time seems to work well with everyone. So we'll have 4 LPC meetings to review this. We may have working groups again in between, but at a minimum 4 meetings in this format. Okay, so James is going to take a moment to talk about the DRI application, just a high-level overview of that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And good afternoon, LPC committee, and whoever's watching from afar. I'm here today to talk about what made this application successful, and we can get started. So if you go to the next slide, a lot of this is really project focused. And as Secretary Rodriguez said, we really showed a lot of successful points because of our ability to show high levels of momentum building into this overall development strategy. The momentum is really built from a few things. Prior plans, both within the scope of downtown development and overall development within the city. Ongoing projects that we learned about in the community, and years of past investment, both private and public. So one of our most recent strategies that helped us outline the course of this application was really the downtown development strategy of 2018, which really taught us how to look further into Gloversville and find our opportunity points and build on them to make it evolve into what became a successful application. So among those have already been achieved. Obviously, I'm here, so the specialist office was really a recommendation out of that. But you'll find in the other projects that you can find at cityofgloversvilledri.com that a lot of these are already being brought in as potential projects. The Arts Incubator in the Shine Building. We have a number of restaurants and breweries, high level of investment in housing stock that includes our upper story development, including new build for residential developments, multimodal travels, and more public investment on strengthening our green spaces. So with all of that, we're starting to check off some of these boxes, which were really outlined as professionals to help us move forward. Next slide. Along with those, we had gone through the process of public engagement and further development with different areas of opportunity like the Cadetta Creek, which was deemed worthy of redevelopment by the state. So we looked at a local waterfront revitalization plan, our EPA assessment grant to identify environmentally compromised sites throughout the city, a brownfield opportunity planning study to figure out how to implement remediation and use strategies for those contaminated sites, which is also throughout the city. Among all of those, with that downtown development strategy, we found a lot of shared priorities. And it allowed us to get a lot of community outreach, a lot of input, and really understand on exactly what the community wants to see. And luckily, it identified really well with the recommendations that were outlined for us to move forward. So if you go to the next slide, we really drilled down on ongoing projects that we knew were going on. So the restoration of the Glove Theater has really been going on for 20 years. So we wanted to ensure that this was included as part of that and show that it's at a different point of being ready. The Shine Building renovations is already going on phase 3 of their renovation strategy, which happened over the course of the past decade. So we had a lot of momentum building from those ongoing projects. And given that those are a few examples of projects that are at an advanced stage of readiness in their evolution of being redeveloped. There were a few town hall meetings and business visits that we were able to understand. A lot of my job, like Lisa and everybody's saying, is not only in this application, but it's boots on the ground and meeting with business owners and understanding exactly what their needs are. And a lot of it is access to capital. It's what other business models can we bring in that complement current business models? How can we attract a higher population? How can we attract tourists to help build sales tax capital? So a few of those outlined that we also presented in the DRI project is the Public Arts Fund and Downtown Business Improvement Fund, which will be marketed as GRIP upon a successful submission into the state. And then on top of all of that as well, the current administration with the city is really prioritizing new investment in rebuilding and expanding existing public spaces, and also creating more and creating accessibility into those public spaces. So if you look into the application, you'll see a really great focus on a new multimodal transport walkway that is the Complete Streets project, built from Trail Station Park into downtown to try to draw in the cyclists and the people who would be utilizing the trail and really welcome them into downtown with more efficiency and accessibility. So it's been quite a while, right? This is obviously is not our first year applying for the DRI. We know which projects got a lot of support. We've done countless charrettes with all of these other plans. We've done an incredibly widespread job of gauging community support for what works and what we know is going to move forward. So not only did we have a good arsenal of projects that were kind of built up, but throughout the course of those 5 years, the ones that stayed and stuck, we worked really hard to ensure that they'd be ready for what is now a successful application. So if you want to go to the next slide, we can go over the area. So it's about 75 square acres, I believe, of total redevelopment area, spanning from the top, which is actually pretty much where our most northernmost project is, the Eccentric Club, and shifting down to about Pine Street on the south side. The east side does encompass a public library just past Fremont Street. Into the west, we have identified this area called the Crescent over in that area by the Daniel Hayes property and just about Orchard Street. So we've been able to encompass the downtown historic district, and everything really within this district is a 10-minute walk time area. But this is also proposed. If there are projects that come in, it goes under the review of the DRI, or I'm sorry, the LPC committee, even if it's outside of this. And that the boundaries of this can kind of get talked about as we sort of look further into what those projects look like.
Thanks, Danny. Or James.
And these are sort of the strategic, excuse me, I'm sorry, I got too much stuff in my way. This is what's going to be kind of refined into the strategic investment plan. This is going to be something that we're going to be going over as we move forward into the LPC meetings. This was already kind of discussed in the proposed DRI that was submitted already, and these are going to be kind of opening up to more involvement going further. So expect this to evolve a little bit further. The real major components of those really were highlighted by the projects that we did put forward. We know that there's ongoing projects that are downtown cornerstones. We're investing in housing stock that has an affordable component, that reaches out to the creative economy, and also promotes accessibility for all. We have multiple projects under the public realm that are meant to kind of reimagine exactly how we're utilizing them and encompassing other buildings around them. La Tower Piazza is a great example of that, an adaptive reuse of what was a former building. Many new cultural opportunities with the Public Arts Fund, as well as the renovations of the theater and the Shine Arts Incubator. The mobility side of it, again, being the Trail Station Park and Project Complete Streets. And we're really trying to do all this with keeping economic development at the forefront and being creative with how we're addressing this as well. So we hope that some projects like the Downtown Business Improvement Fund, which would be that GRIP fund, can help spur a lot of the vibrant small businesses that we're starting to see establish themselves now. So we're looking forward to building that further. Lisa, was this one of your slides?
Yeah, you just covered a lot of them. I just want to point out that with the vision and those goals that James just went over, We will be getting additional input from the LPC on those, as well as the public. When we have our open house next week, people have the opportunity to comment on that vision and goals. So James is right, that's not the first time you're seeing that. These are some of the projects, and we're not going to go through these in detail today. We just wanted to note that these were the projects that were submitted in the application, and you can read the application. I will note that putting together the application was a little over $45 million in total project costs. And then working with the people and developing the project request for the application, it was about $11 million in DRI requests and a cross-cutting private, public, and nonprofit organizations. So this was our starting point. And we'll talk in a minute about that call for projects. So this is where we're starting from, and then we'll move from here.
And just to emphasize that these will all be vetted, these potential projects that were in the application and any new that come in during this process with the open call will all be vetted by the LPC. The public will have a chance to comment on all of them before that final slate is recommended to the state for funding. So nothing has been decided yet.
Right. Thanks, Laura. Okay, everybody stretch, next side to side, forward, down, little. I was looking for actual Zoom stretch exercises earlier this morning. All right. So Michael and I want to talk now about some some specific items with the LPC. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is, we've already referenced this a couple of times, this open call for projects. This is an open submission. So the list that you just saw, all those projects will be vetted. It's just to look for additional projects that perhaps weren't ready at the time of the application or just surfaced or have somebody's been thinking about, and now this is the time that they'd like to come forward with their project. What we do in effect is take that list that you just saw on the previous slide, build it through the open call of projects, and then work with you to vet and refine. It's a very much a refinement process to get to the final projects. What would happen should you choose to do this is, that's why it says proposed on the top, is that it would be open from February 4th, which is Friday, to the 18th. There's a little screenshot there on the right. That document will be uploaded to cityofgloversvilledri.com for downloading, and it's in a Microsoft Word format, so that the potential project applicant would be able to fill out the information on their side. It can be submitted back online to us by email, and all the instructions will be in there. And or a hard copy could be delivered to City Hall. This is this 2-week period, should you decide to do it. There's a lot of information that is required to evaluate the projects for inclusion on that final slate. A lot of information. I cannot overemphasize that. So anyone listening in the public or anyone on the LPC who knows anybody who's interested in submitting a project request, we, and Laura will say this too, is that it's really kind of an ASAP for real, try to get your information together. And once we get the bulk of the information, the consulting team will work back with the project applicants to fill this out and refine and get the correct information so that everyone, the LPC, our state partners, and the public, when you see the projects, can make informed decisions. That's really what this is about. So, and then, so we start with our original application. We can do the open call should the LPC decide, and then we work and call that back to our final slate, which should be around $15 million when we get there. So I'll pause there and I'll ask the mayor and Wally Hart to have an LPC discussion and a vote.
Yeah, so this is kind of the first decision that the LPC has to make as to whether to have an open call. I think it's a good idea because we want as many people as possible, as many project sponsors as possible to have a chance to submit a project. Casting a wide net is probably a very valuable thing. So if there's any, what I'd like to do is at least open that up for a motion. I'll entertain a motion to actually issue a call, an open call for projects. Is there anyone who would move that? On the
Make that motion, Vince. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Great.
Just for our note taking on our end. So Ron Peters first and Greg Truckenmiller is a second. Was that right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
correct.
So it's open for discussion. Is there anyone who would like to chime?
I'm all for it too.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Anyone else?
I think just if I might add something really briefly, it's kind of like it seems like a lot of material to go through, but the more detail you go through early on, and the more time you spend early on conceptualizing the project, better it will be. And the open calls are a great kind of opportunity for bottom-up development to occur in a DRI community. So it is a great idea to consider it.
Okay.
Vince, I would agree with that. And I think it's important that people do not feel like we had our preconceived notions of everything we're going to do with this project. So there might be good ideas we haven't heard of yet.
That's right. There might be some great transformative projects out there that we haven't heard of yet. So,
right.
All right. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, I think it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So part of the LPC's role will be get the word out to members in the community that this will be online. If anybody's interested, again, there's a little thumbnail on the right that is a snapshot of the cover page with instructions on the cover page, one page of instructions, and then all of the questions follow on multiple pages. So again, that will be open and available to anyone on February 4th to February 18th. And again, on the website, there's questions and comments. So anybody wondering or have any questions about the open call and where to start or et cetera, please just shoot us a message through the website.
Would this be a crazy thought? We have an account with WENT, CRG does. If James will say we're to, just do a brief public announcement and have WENT get it out locally, is that acceptable?
I believe so. I'll just ask Danny and our state partners if that would be okay for a press release on this.
I think it would, it's a great idea. I think that distributing the message to, a network is an awesome idea. We usually defer to the community with regard to the reach and extend in different stations that they reach out to. The only thing that we ask is that we have the opportunity to review all press releases and communications before they go out.
Yep. James, you okay with doing that? If everybody agrees to that?
I'm very okay with doing that. Yeah.
Good, very good. Good luck. Well,
Question.
Sure.
Yes.
Question, is this open call, is that available online already? If there's only 2 weeks, so you can be available for submissions, so it's going to take a while to get people to get their stuff together. Well, actually, the next 2 weeks.
No, that's very true. It is not live yet because we needed to have this vote today.
Okay.
But yes, there is a lot of information, but there is a timeline that we have to work within.
Okay.
So I'll touch on this at the end in our next steps. It will be, we have to just finalize the materials now, so it will be live on the 4th and available for those 2 weeks.
We at the chamber, we can e-blast that out too to all our members. So.
Oh, okay, thanks, Mark.
Excellent.
Hey everyone, this is Dave Ashton from Department of State. Just want to give people the opportunity to comment on, is this a long enough time frame for people to respond? Do you think the window needs to be longer? I mean, this is definitely on the shorter end of what we would typically see. So just want to give people an opportunity to comment because it certainly could be extended.
I think it should be extended. I think it's a short period of time.
I would have to agree. I think it should be extended.
Depends upon how much information you're asking them to put in their application, in their submission, and if there is a point to add further information later on.
That's a good point. Yes, we would like as much information as possible. But when they come in, our team will then work with those applicants, if you will, to build out the information.
Yeah, Chris, that's a good point. I do think 2 weeks seems a little short.
But, you know, when they come in, Lisa, my question would be this. You might get, I'm guessing, a whole slew of inquiries of different projects. How do we make the first initial cut? Because, you know, quite honestly, some can be fantastic and some might just be, you know, someone who doesn't really have a commitment, but, you know, wants some money, so to speak, you know, from the DRI.
Yeah, right. And that is working with our team, our state partners, and the LPC. There will be some projects that just really aren't ready, and we'll know that. And then those projects that are more ready but might need a little bit assistance, because we have a whole bench of folks behind us, Laura, Michael, and I, that will help build out those projects. So in large part, that's our idea or our job, to make sure that what we're bringing forth to you have, you know, a highest level reality as we can at this point. But there will be time to build out, you know, these projects with some of the folks that are submitting. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa, would that time, you know, include some days after the 18th, possibly?
Yeah. And, you know, we do have our detailed sort of our internal, almost day by day schedule that we have that we're working on. And we could, to Dave's point, and still stay on our schedule, we could extend this by another week. So there'd be, essentially 3 weeks to be able to fill this out. If the LPC members were more comfortable with a 3-week time frame, we could adjust that to, what would that be, 25th?
I don't think that, I mean, people aren't even going to see this or hear about this or have a chance to think about it in 2 days. So I think that extending it another week would make sense. It'd be fair.
Yeah, I think doing the extension, you know, would be great. And I think that the outreach and encouragement and, you know, advocacy or encouragement for people to apply should be done regularly. And that with said encouragement, you know, it should also be nudged to ask questions that they may have. So, you know, if someone says, you know, they talk to an LPC member, or they say, well, you know, how do I do this, or what do I need to get? You could say, hey, that's a great question for the LPC. Why don't, or that's a great question for the consultant team. Why don't you shoot them an email? Why don't you give them a call? I think that's important. It's kind of, the messaging is important too, because sometimes, you know, with the tight time frame, people may get hung up on a question, but be shy to ask. And I think making sure that this is an open project is really important, and our open process is really important.
So Danny, just to confirm, so there are resources to help someone who's interested in making an application in this window of opportunity.
Correct. Yeah, there are resources to the extent that they're available to help develop a project. But, you know, DRI money is really intended to help get those projects over that finishing line, right? It's not, and this is for sort of everybody's benefit, it's not really, it's never really the first money in. It's really to help close a gap, if you will. So if you think of it that way, and then the folks that are listening who may have a project idea, it really should be, a somewhat well thought idea. And if you go back to one of the previous slides, for example, one of the criteria is that it has to be shovel ready within 2 years of the award of those dollars, for example. So that would indicate, because projects tend to take a long time, as we know, that the project is relatively well along. And so there's the ability to bring that in, and our team is available to help build that out if there's any specific questions.
So an application or for a project comes in, who should get that and receive that? That be you, Lisa, or it be other folks on a committee to say, hey, it's a nice application, but you need some assistance with A, B, C, and D.
We're sort of the first of that, but we will be sharing this information with the LPC.
Okay.
But with our experience and with the state partners, we'll do sort of an initial vetting, and we might go back to somebody. We might say, thanks, this is good, we can run with it, et cetera. But that's our job, is to facilitate this process, this open call process, and share the information back with you.
Any calls we get will funnel to you. I mean, any paper applications, whatever, we'll just funnel them right to you.
Yes, if you're talking to somebody, and yeah, Ron, that's a good question, especially you, if somebody goes to the Center for Regional Growth and says, hey, I got a project, and they've been talking to you about a particular project, because that's your job, then you need to, get this form and work with your clients to fill it out. And then, we're available, you have our email, you can call us, and people can always chat through the website to us as well.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to build on what Lisa was talking about with respect to sort of ideas versus projects. So DRI is a fast moving process. We're going to be at the end of the planning process and sort of recommending that slate of projects to the state in July. So there's a lot of public outreach here, and I think it's important for people to understand that we're looking for ideas that can be translated quickly into projects. If they're ideas or projects that, as Lisa said, are very far along. A site's been identified, there's financing lined up, there's a clear local sponsor who's looking to advance the project. When we think of ideas, often those ideas are things that we want to see in our community, but they don't have a sponsor, or they don't have a site, they don't have financing lined up, or all of those things. So we certainly, early on in the process, we want to think of ideas, because those ideas might translate into projects, or there might be people that are doing projects that would sort of fulfill those ideas. But very quickly, we sort of turn and focus our attention on immediately or fairly quickly implementable projects that have things like that sponsor that can go to contract with the state to receive DRI funding, that can carry through the project with financing, that folks that have site control, and all the other things that demonstrate project readiness. So I just wanted to take a moment to sort of differentiate between ideas and projects in a DRI context, because ultimately projects that aren't ready, that don't have project sponsors, that don't have site control or financing, those probably aren't going to make it into the final strategic investment plan, and will probably drop off fairly quickly in the process.
Thanks,
But
David.
that's still a
important.
good exercise to go through, because some of these ideas and longer term projects that may not be funded by DRI could still come back to an agency like Empire State Development for CFA funding, Homes and Community Renewal. Ron works a lot with the Community Development Block Grant Program. So having these ideas and having these projects, even if they're not going to be funded by DRI, is still a good exercise to go through.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see great projects. I know we've got them out there, but there will be some great ideas that come in and aren't ready. Is there somewhere that'll be understood so people can see this? Yeah, hey, here's what you're going to need, and if it's this, it's not quite ready yet, but let's just work on it toward the future, something like that, so they won't be disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll document everything that comes in.
Okay.
And make sure that we have that. And then, meet the criteria that Dave just spoke about, will, some projects will bubble up and some will say, this is a great idea. We don't want to lose it. So we'll keep that. Yeah, for sure.
Good, thanks.
All right, we want to just keep moving forward because we want to give the public time to ask questions as well today. One of the things we wanted to talk about in another discussion that we want to have with you is the match requirement for the receipt of the DRI fund. So I was going to ask Mike Lindolo from MRB Group, who is our economist and real estate expert, to speak to this.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. Lisa and her team get to do all the fun stuff. I'm the money guy, so I get to look at the budgets and so on like that. But there are some points that I think LPC members should be aware of in terms of what types of projects that you'll be looking at. And for potential applicants, what are the types of projects that you're going to need to propose that are going to be fundable under this? So the first is there is a state minimum of $100,000. Your project would have to use at least $100,000 of DRI money for it to be individually contracted with the state for an award. I will mention there is the possibility for the city to set up a business assistance fund. We'll talk about later what that means. But if we have smaller projects, there is a way to serve that, but they're not standalone projects to be evaluated by the LPC. So first is the $100,000 minimum DRI, not the total project cost, the DRI ask. The second is what ratios are we looking at? For for-profit projects, the state sets a minimum, or I should say a maximum, of DRI funding providing 40% of the total project cost. That rises up to 50% under certain circumstances related to carbon reduction goals and energy efficiency. That's the absolute maximum. I do want to talk to you about what is the practical maximum, right? This is now the sixth DRI I've worked on. Lisa's worked on many as well in the past. And what we find is the projects that you want to leverage are the ones that have the most leverage behind them. So each dollar of DRI money is going to maybe bring in $5 of private money, right? Or $4 of private money. So typically we're looking for projects that are looking for a 20% DRI participation. If you're talking to project sponsors, really that's where we need them to come in is at that number. If there is a worthy project that needs more than 20% assistance from DRI, we can consider it. But just to sort of anchor people as they're putting their budgets together and as they're refining their ask, we want maximum leverage, and that's essentially asking for 20% or less from the DRI program. Public projects and not-for-profit projects can go up to 100% DRI money. Again, for that, we're going to look for more participation by the applicant, by the project sponsor. So the LPC undoubtedly will be looking and look favorably upon folks that are bringing other money into it. There is one other financial requirement that that's worth bearing out here. For a private project, the state is going to be looking for at least a 10% cash equity contribution to the project. Actual money that the sponsor is putting into it. So financing a DRI money, and then 10% at least on the equity side. There may be other things that the LPC wants to prioritize that we'll talk about at future LPC meetings, but I wanted to give that kind of context. And if you take this to its logical extreme, $100,000 minimum DRI, where DRI represents 20% of the overall project, means we're looking really for projects that are $500,000 projects or more. Really, that's kind of the threshold that we're looking at. And everything else is up for discussion after that, but these are the minimums and kind of where we're looking for.
Mike, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What about projects? How would this be viewed? If a private project comes in, they're looking for 40% of a DRI, but there also has some other state money or some federal money in there. How's that going to be interpreted?
Sure, that's a great question, by the way, and that's part of what we look at as we look at how many other sources of public or other subsidies to the project coming in. in addition to grants or federal sources, we might even look at, well, are they going to get an IDA abatement, right? What's the totality of the public subsidy? That will also help us look at the project to determine how much leverage has happened. Typically, LPCs don't have a problem with federal leverage, leveraging other federal programs, that kind of thing, but we don't want to necessarily double or triple dip, at the state or local level, right? So we'll be attuned to those things as well. If we feel that a project sponsor already has enough public subsidy in their project to make it viable, we'll certainly let you know that that's our opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Michael? Okay, so this will be an ongoing, as those projects come in and we receive them, starting with the application and the DRI open call for projects, we start building a master database on our end, and that's where Michael really enjoys looking at those leverages and those numbers. So we do keep track of all that, and we will share this all with you as we move through our next LPC meetings. Okay, we're nearing the end of our presentation. We're just going to ask Laura to talk about our next steps. So for the LPC and our members of our public.
Thank you, Lisa. All right. So first, I'm going to go through next steps for the LPC members, and then we're going to go through next steps in the process. So first, we're asking LPC members to give us input on that public engagement strategy that was shared earlier today, and with particular focus on these 4 items here on the slide. And you can share your input via that LPC questionnaire, which also asks for your thoughts on the draft DRI vision and the draft goals that we flashed up briefly on the screen earlier. We'll also be asking for some just housekeeping input on our meeting schedule. So we have some tentative times and dates in there to kind of give you a heads up. And if you have potential conflicts or anything, you can let us know via this questionnaire as well. Also in there, we're asking for your initial thoughts on potential strategies to achieve the DRI goals. This is an element for the strategic investment plan. So we'd like to get that conversation started, and we'll continue that conversation in future meetings. And so the next part of this, in terms of next steps in the DRI process, we'll already be kicking off our public engagement next week. So this is why we're asking our committee members to get us feedback on the engagement strategy by Monday at noon, so we can incorporate that into the public events that will be starting next week. We'll be having a virtual open house. This will open on February 10th, and it will be open for 1 week. And we're planning to present that with a live webinar presentation on Thursday next week, February 10th at 10 a.m. We'll be using a similar format as this today. So there'll be a webinar where folks can either join as webinar attendees or can watch the Facebook live stream on the City of Gloversville Facebook page. So we'll start to send out advertisements for this week. So keep an eye open. We'll get this information on the website as well. And in this virtual open house, we'll be providing the public an overview of the DRI process, and downtown, we're already starting our survey of downtown. So some information on your investments and your assets and anchors, et cetera, downtown. We'll also be asking for input specifically on that draft vision and goals from the public here as well, and providing an overview of that project selection process and potential projects, and also directing them toward that call for projects, which will be open in parallel. And we'll be doing other targeted outreach throughout the month of February. We'll be kicking that off as well. So thank you all for your discussion and vote here. So we will go ahead with the open call for projects. So we'll have this open from February 4th to 25th. So we'll go ahead and finalize those documents. We will launch that on the website at this URL, so /open call on Friday. We'll get that up as soon as we can on Friday. There'll be a packet of information, 8 to 10 pages or so, summarizing these eligibility requirements, a lot of the information we went over today for those applicants. And then there will also be that Microsoft Word submission form where they can just fill in their fields. they'll be able to submit this online, either through email, or they'll be able to drop it off in hard copy to City Hall. And that information will be on the website. It'll be in these documents as well. So a reminder for public and interested applicants who are listening, please start early. There is a lot of information that you might need to gather. In theory, we're looking for more projects that are ready to go. So hopefully you have some of this ready to go, but please don't wait until the 24th, because there are quite a few questions in that submission form. So we want to make sure you have time to get through it, to ask us questions and to reach out as you need to complete that application. And then after the 25th, we'll be working with you to get some final pieces in as well. For both the call and for the public events, we'll be asking the LPC to help us send this out to their networks. Thanks for those fabulous ideas already on how to do this. So we'll get some flyers and things together like we did for this meeting that you can send to your email lists and put on your social media, etc. So watch out for some more information from us on those things. All right. So unless there's any immediate questions on next steps, I will pass over.
Or I just wanted to add one thing to what you said on this, on the right-hand side. This we talked about earlier, and David Ashton from the Department of State also reiterated. So there, that all that is again, and that the cover page to the Microsoft Word document that you can download explains all of this in detail. So anybody who gets this, it's a one-page, sort of instructions, and then the way that we created the form, we're looking for certain elements, right, that you have to fill out, and there's instructions for each one of those elements. So it's intended to be helpful, right, for somebody to download that and see in detail what we're looking for that is more of a project.
So just to chime in on one thing here that I think is important for everyone, the DRI boundary is really critical, and it's critical because the state can only fund projects within the DRI boundary. So the LPC does have discretion to sort of tweak the boundary if you see fit. So I see here it says sort of in or near DRI boundaries. So that may be providing a little bit of latitude. So if there's a great project that no one ever thought of and it just happens to fall just outside, it gives the LPC the latitude to change that boundary. I wouldn't suggest you wait until late in the process to do that. I think that's a consideration you want to make sort of earlier on in the process, if that's possible. But just want to be clear that only projects within the final DRI boundary can be awarded DRI funding.
So that would be a function changing the boundaries of, I guess, the submissions that come in, David?
Sorry, say that again?
There'll be a function, to change the boundaries, it'll be a function of what kind of submissions that we receive to see where they play out.
It could be, or other considerations. You might see some reason to, modify it for some other reason to be inclusive.
Okay, thanks.
Dave, is the caveat there that it's a sort of a logical extension of the boundary? And another community that we were working in, there was a project that was a great project, is a great project, but it was blocks away. So we would have to really stretch the boundary just to capture that. And that didn't make sense in that community.
Yes, that's a great clarification. So you're looking to have a logical boundary, keep integrity to the compactness of the area and all the things that you did in your lead up in the application. We're not looking to gerrymander here, so to speak, but there is a little bit of flexibility there.
And, the notion of the boundaries, it's compact and walkable, like those are the first requirements of the DRI program. So as we're thinking about projects that might be outside of that boundary that was defined in the application, keep that in mind as a compact, walkable boundary.
Lisa, is that something we can put on the next LPC agenda? Because I know the mayor had talked about just a small change to include, a block that was contiguous with existing boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
We may not get an application, but from anybody in that area, but it was contiguous, and he was thinking about that. I think we could add it to the agenda, so at least we don't lose the opportunity to amend the boundaries if we need to.
Yeah, it's better just, as Dave said, discuss things earlier rather than later. So absolutely, yes.
I'd rather not do it after we get an application, make it look like we did it just to accommodate. I mean, I think it's better if we include it.
I think just to kind of add on to the discussion that if the LPC does decide to amend the DRI boundary, that you keep a record outlining the rationale behind doing so, just to have it, so to maintain consistency and fairness across all potential boundary adjustments in the event that somebody complains or there's a potential issue. I always kind of, with such a high profile planning project, it's always important, you know, kind of to circle the wagon, so to speak, to make sure that there's, you know, ample evidence backing up decisions that are made by the LPC.
Thank you for that.
Jenny. We'll need that logical, it has to be logical, it has to be justified. And before our next meeting, since we're wrapping up this call by the 25th, that means we'll have the full list ready for you, since that meeting is scheduled for early March. So you'll have a chance to see, you know, if there's a logical project or reason to extend, in addition to considering other factors. So
Okay,
yes, we
great.
can put that on the agenda for you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good point. Thanks, Wally.
One other comment I wanted to
Wait,
share,
sure.
because I've had a couple of people who've asked me about this. I want to remind people that, you know, the consolidated funding application process, although I think Mike and Ron can attest that it's not been announced for 2022 yet, that is a great opportunity for those projects that maybe can't get ready for this, you know, if there's new projects that we really, I don't want them to think because they can't be included in this DRI that there's not grant funding and funding out there. There has been, and if the CFA process continues this year, you know, that there may be changes with a new governor, but it certainly is something that they should be working with Mike and James and looking at that as, is that another opportunity for them to look at for funding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any more questions from the LPC before we open it up to the public? I heard you're supposed to wait 8 seconds on Zoom.
Yeah, I've got a question. When is the next meeting that we would be required or we would be asked to attend as LPC members?
The dates are in the questionnaire. There are some proposed dates for you. So it would be I think it's the first week in March. First or second week in March.
All right. And I have to go visit my mother on the 10th. I didn't know if the virtual meeting that
10th of February.
Yeah, 10th of February. So, okay, good. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Okay, so on the public remarks, again, we've been saying this all along, this is being recorded. This will be, the recording and the PowerPoint will be posted on cityofgloversvilledri.com. When you get there, there's a contact button. We highly encourage anyone who's listening to subscribe to the mailing list. And what we do is we keep a database. So when we have any public outreach method, we do a blast and let people know that you can register or watch on Facebook Live or go take the survey or whatever it is we're trying to blast out. And we check that often and we continually build that database. And then also there's a comment box. So you can submit a comment at any time under the contact tab at cityofgloversvilledri.com. So with that, we have had our members of our team monitoring the chat and Q&A window. And we mentioned this on at the onset of this presentation. But right on time, we wanted to, we were planning on ending this at 5 p.m. this evening. So I know that we've gotten some questions and I'm going to kick it over to James in a moment, but if you have questions at all, please put them into the Q&A window, which is the icon on the bottom of your screen that looks like the one with the red circle around it in front of us right now. You could also raise your hand and we can unmute you or give you an indication where you can unmute yourself and ask your question live, and then we will mute you after you ask your question. For those following on Facebook, you can put a comment right in the live stream, and we're also monitoring that as well. And I believe that a couple of questions have come in while we were going through this presentation. So James, do you want to kick us off and see if there's anything specific that we need to answer?
Yeah, I think now Danny and I kind of went through some of these while the narrative was going on just to address them, but it's probably still a good idea to address them live, especially the fact that they're considering the processes for the open call. So can we go over, we had a user ask where to apply for the open call process and where can you find materials for it?
Right. There we go. Laura just went to the slide. In case you can't see the screen, if you're just listening, if you go to www.cityofgloversvilledri.com/open call, I believe there's also an open call tab when they just go to the regular web page, Laura?
Yes, so there will be. There's not
There will be,
currently,
right.
but
That's right.
on
We haven't made it
Friday-
live yet because we needed the vote today. But yes, if you
on
just go to
Friday, this will open.
cityofgloversvilledri.com, there will be a tab that says open call and you'll be able to download the information right from there.
And if you want to fill out an application, perhaps there is another option for in person as well, or is it all online?
There is a copy, so you can also download it, fill it out in hard copy, and then submit it. There'll be an address to submit it to the City Hall. If you have any difficulty downloading or getting it off of the website, please let us know and we can find a way to have get a hard copy to you. But yes, you can download, print it out, fill it out that way, hard copy, and mail it in or drop it off at City Hall.
Okay. And I know that we went over this next one as well, but again, maybe for providing some more clarification on if you have an idea that could turn into a project and you need some help to fill out some of the stuff, where's a good starting point to go?
So I would say either with that call for projects, the form that Laura was just referring to, or in the lower right-hand part of the screen, it says submit a comment at any time and subscribe to the mailing list. So when you go to cityofgloversvilledri.com, there'll be a contact button. And if you click on that contact button, the first thing that comes up is a comment box. And so, please put your name, what your question is, and a contact information, and we will reach out to you.
Okay. We're getting a lot of reactions on Facebook, a lot of hearts, which I think is a good sign. But we have yet to see anything in writing so far. So I'm encouraging anybody who has any questions or input for the meeting so far or the DRI in general to feel free to click the raise hand icon next to the share screen. Next one of the icons at the bottom of the screen says raise hand. If you have any input, I will unmute you. Can say your input and we can respond accordingly.
A couple of questions just came in, James.
Oh, here we go. How will info from work group meeting be shared with the public? Can the public participate in the work groups?
The work groups are for the LPC. This is the LPC's role primarily in this process. So, and we don't know yet if we are even going to do work groups. That will be determined based on the amount of information that we'll have to review with the LPC. So those will be LPC sessions.
We will report out any decisions happen in the public meetings. We'll be reporting out on things that happened in the public meetings. So there'll be a transparency mechanism that way. But this also helps us have some conversations with confidential project information. It lets us have those conversations and then report out findings in the public meetings.
Okay. When should the public comment on the public boundaries? I know that there's going to be an agenda item for our next meeting. So that, I mean, we can, the boundaries that have been presented so far, the public is welcome to comment on those right now. But when should the public comment on boundaries going forward?
That will be part of, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, our open house, the virtual survey that we are, that will be live from the 10th to the 17th, February 10th to February 17th. We'll have information in that virtual open house, the vision statement, the goals, the boundary for the public to comment on during that time.
Okay, the next question is concerning ineligible funding. I believe that the question is about, I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding it, but concerning the 40 to 80% application contribution, including eligible costs. So I'm assuming that will the DRI fund, will the DRI fund ineligible costs? I'm not sure. Could you potentially?
Is it 40% on the total cost, which would include potentially ineligible for funding?
I think that's probably a question of, if you want it, for example, project acquisition is a good example. Project acquisition can be part of an overall project, but it cannot be paid with for DRI funding. Here's one example where something that's ineligible for DRI funding could still be eligible as part of a broader project. I'm guessing that's the question, but if maybe Michael and some of our DOS partners could chime in on how that works, looking at the overall project budget.
When we would evaluate the budget, we would be eliminating any ineligible costs before we do anything else further, right? So we wouldn't be applying ratios or doing any of the tests. We would have to get that out of the budget first.
See the hand up.
So there's a couple folks who raised their hand.
Yep, I have one ready to go if we have nothing to add.
So there was one question about code of conduct that I wanted to address too. It said, how are potential conflicts of interest in the work groups monitored? When we went over the code of conduct in the beginning of the presentation, each LPC member is required to sign a code of conduct outlining the expected behavior through their participation in the LPC. Each LPC member is also required to fill out and sign a recusal form, which outlines their potential and actual conflicts of interest. And as I said before, this is a kind of a hair trigger mechanism where, if there's any doubt, it's always best to recuse oneself from the, a potential project. So all of those documents will be kept and monitored by the DOS. The LPC co-chairs will also read a preamble at the beginning of each LPC meeting, encouraging folks with perceived or actual conflicts of interest to disclose them at that time. And all LPC members will be asked to disclose potential and actual conflicts at the earliest possible time.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, Danny. The participant has properties at 69, 77, 79, and 81 East Fulton Street. Is that in the area? I know that the East Fulton Street boundary is just the parcel past the library. Laura, do you have the map you can pull up really quick? Oh yeah, hey. Just a parcel past it.
Past the library?
Yeah. Chris, what's the number East Fulton Street for the library? Property address?
Our address is 58 East Fulton Street. But there is a parking lot behind us, and then there is the old probation department, which looks like, according to this map, is if the old probation department is outside of the boundary.
Yes. So it seems that everything from 58 and beyond, I'm not sure what the Fulton County Annex building is, and I believe is that parcel across the street. But it seems that everything beyond those two parcels would be outside of that boundary. So if there were projects at that location, they would have to be presented for potential boundary expansion.
Right.
I just Googled 69 East Fulton, and I think it's within the boundary. I guess, Murray, maybe you could shoot us a note via the website and we can get back to you on that.
And just a note on that process. So as part of those application materials, for anyone who's submitting to the open call for projects, there's an explanation of the boundary. And then there's a question that if you're outside of the boundary, it explains that minor adjustments are allowed and, can be considered by the LPC. So if you are near, but outside the boundary, you can make your case. You can explain why this is an important project to include. So you'll have a chance to add that into your application for the LPC to consider, and they can take that into advisement when they they finalize the DRI boundary to see if there's any adjustments they'd like to make.
Okay.
I think you're right. I think it's one outside, but Murray, just shoot us a message and we can talk to you about that.
Okay. Any other questions from participants? Not too active on Facebook right now. I'm not seeing hands up.
Did you say a hand? Somebody raised their hand?
There we go. Ready? Yep. Ready. I'm gonna unmute you in 1 second. Okay. Rennie, can you hear us? You might have to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Hello, Rennie?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on the boundaries, the maps you show aren't very clear to show the exact property line, just like you just discussed on East Fulton Street. How can that be better seen by the public so we see what parcels are included and not? For example, on the northern part of the map, just from the narrative, I can see the Eccentrics Club is included, but other properties on that same side of the street, like the Salvation Army and even the other park that's contiguous to the park that is part of the DRI isn't included. And but all these different parcels are hard to see. That one happens to be fairly easy to see.
Right. Yeah.
How can we
That's a
get
good
better
point.
idea of what these boundaries really are?
Yeah, we actually do have a version of this map with those tax parcel boundaries, Rennie. So thank you for pointing that out. When we do the open house, we will make sure that they're on. And then you should be able to, when you're taking the virtual open house survey, be able to kind of, pan around and zoom in to have a more closer inspection. So yeah, that's a very good point. I think for today, we were trying to keep it a little high level, but we do have a more detailed map of showing the tax parcel boundaries.
Thank you, Rennie, for your question. Okay, we have another. Murray, you're up. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Now, what are you looking for a proposal? I mean, if we're going to do an application, because I own properties on Main Street and I also own properties from that 66, right after the library on the whole side of the street there. I'm curious of what you're looking for applications on. I mean, a lot of these buildings are run down. I've put my money into into the buildings for people that are commercially renting from me, but the rents are very low. And, unfortunately, it's not enough money that comes in to really completely rehab the exterior of the buildings or doing the parking lots, etc. Is this what this money is really allocated for? To help us?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Potentially, yes. We've seen projects that are renovation. I guess, Michael, maybe you could profile a couple of projects that you've seen on the private sector side that would match what Murray is talking about.
Okay, Murray.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if you want to add anything, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Murray, I guess the short answer is yes. We've seen a mix of projects, everything from a facade renovation. Now this year, the project request, so Laura just put up on the screen, has to be a minimum of $100,000 that is a DRI project. But that could go into the building in a variety of ways. It could upgrade. There's a project that I know of in the city of Watertown, which is around 2 or 3 winter. Somebody upgraded their apartments and is now renting them at a market rate, which was a need in that community. It could be, it's generally not sort of pipes and roofs and things of that nature, but it's really to transform the project, if you will.
Okay, Rennie, did you have a question?
Yeah, one more question. I see the first public meeting is on February 10th at 10 a.m. Is 10 a.m. a good time for have a public meeting? That seems a little odd to me. And then related to the same thing, is there a time and action calendar? I know you put steps up, you have your bullet points with all the steps, but is there a time and action calendar where specifically what needs to get done when that can be shared with the public too?
We could talk about, so that public meeting is really kind of a kickoff to point people to a virtual open house, which will be open for a week. And so we could take questions at that public meeting, but it's really to explain what the virtual open house is and then point people to that website. We could talk about that 10 a.m. start time with the mayor's schedule. We're going to do that with him. So thank you for that thought. The second part, we do have a schedule on the website that will be Laura's putting up some other dates as well, but dates and schedules, et cetera, will all be on that website, which will be continually updated. So you want to pay attention to the website.
Okay, Lisa, we're at 5 o'clock right now.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, we have a few more hands up, both from Renee and Mariah, excuse me, and Rennie, but I want to be conscious of our schedule here.
Right. I guess nothing else in the chat. I guess, Mariah, do you have one more quick question? We're going to, and again, anybody can reach us through cityofgloversvilledri.com after this presentation.
Go ahead, Mariah.
Yeah, my other question is, like I have Jimmy's. Now, would he have to apply separately? Because he's been asking me for, a few years now about air conditioning and like an air conditioning, heat type process because he's doing, food in there and stuff. I mean, is that can I apply for that application on something like that? It's a costly venture.
Lisa, for some background, Jimmy is a tenant.
Is a deli. Yeah,
it's a
he's
deli tenant of Mariah's.
Michael, can it be the operator of the business or does it need to be the building owner?
It can be whoever's making the investment. It's the entity that's making the commitment. So if you as landlord are making a landlord improvement to a building that you're then leasing to someone else, or a tenant of the building that's making a tenant improvement to the building, I guess I'm just thinking about what the positive, in terms of like the impact of that project, how you describe that. I'm taking a little bit different direction than rather ownership, but would there be job creation associated with it? Would there be new space that's being utilized that wasn't previously utilized? This is probably not, if it's just simply an established space and there's no job creation, there's no additional oomph behind it, I think it'd be hard to get it through the scoring criteria that the LPC is going to be using.
Right. And I'd say, Mariah, once you look at that open call for projects, you'll see what's required, and that'll help answer some of these questions.
I think one aspect of that project that might be helpful is to think of it in the building decarbonization context. So if you were to use, or your tenant were to use clean heating and cooling technology to achieve those reductions, that might, make the application more competitive. But again, as Michael and Lisa both pointed out, the scoring criteria do tend to focus on those other projects. But with NYSERDA as the partner this year, even if the project isn't successful through the DRI, NYSERDA also has tons of resources that can help achieve that goal for your tenant as well. And that can be, actualized in future application processes too. And so it would be good to submit the project anyway, so that it can be stored and directed to the appropriate agency as well.
Yep, I was just going to ask the mayor for some final thoughts, but I was going to say exactly that. Danny, thank you. There's sort of no project ideas, right? It's just whether it's sort of worthy of DRI money, if you will. So we want those ideas, Mariah. So we'll certainly take them in. All right. Well, we're just past our 5 o'clock hour. Thank you so much to everyone who's attended. And I'll ask the mayor and Wally if they have any closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated, and I really appreciate the community interest in this. And I'm hoping that that interest expands, and hopefully we'll see you again on the 10th when we open that open house. Hopefully we'll get a lot of participation with respect to that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. Anything else from our state partners or?
I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to participate in this meeting. It seems like a deluge of information, but I'm confident that if we just put one foot in front of the other, we'll look up in 6 months with a strong SIP with the team we have here. So just grateful for everyone for participating and thankful to have this process underway.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
So much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.